Tervitused teile Tallinnasse siit Brüsselist. Soovisin väga teiega koos täna kultuurikatlas olla ja kaasa rääkida niivõrd huvitaval tulevikulahendusel, nagu seda on vesinik. Kuid nagu ikka, vahel juhtub nii, et head asjad kuhjuvad ühte päeva ning nii läks ka tänasega. Selle asemel, et teiega vesiniku tulevikku arutada, pean hoopis samal ajal seisma Euroopa Parlamendi ees ja andma aru kogu Euroopa energeetikasektori tervise ja hetkeolukorra teemadel. Loodetavasti leiame peagi koroonakriisile lahenduse ja saame füüsiliselt kohtuda ning rohepöördest laiemalt rääkida. Kuid täna peame leppima videoteel suhtlemisega. Tänasel arutelul osaleb hiljem minu kabinetiliige Kitti Nyitrai, kes saab siis juba lähemalt vastata kõikidele teie küsimustele. Seega, päris ilma otse suhtluseta ma teid ei jäta. Tulles tänase arutelu teema juurde, siis arvatavasti ei ole enam kellelegi uudiseks, et Euroopa on seadnud oma sihiks saavutada kliimaneutraalsus aastaks 2050. Paigas on ka tähtsad vahesammud. Ühe sellisena on komisjon välja pakkunud, et 2030 aastaks peaks Euroopa emissioone vähendama 55% võrreldes 1990 aastaga. Mul on hea meel, et ka Eesti on enda ambitsioonikate eesmärkide saavutamist toetanud. Need sihid ei täitu aga iseenesest. Meil on vaja järgmise 30 aastaga muuta nii oma energeetika kui ka transpordisektori väga põhjalikult. Elektri osakaal meie energiavajaduses kahekordistub sajandi keskpaigaks. 80% sellest elektrist peaks põhinema taastuvenergial. Juba aastaks 2030 eeldame, et üle 65% elektrist on puhas. Samuti on oodata maagaasi osakaalu märgatavat vähenemist. Selle asemele tuleb näiteks biogaas, aga ka vesinik, meie tänase vestluse põhielement. Mitte kunagi varem pole olnud Euroopa Liidu liikmesriikides nii suurt ambitsioonikust ja tahtmist liikuda saastavamate lahenduste kasutamise juurest puhaste tehnoloogiate juurde. Seega saame öelda, et käimasolev koroonakriis ei ole pannud meid unustama kliimaprobleeme. Me lihtsalt seisame samal ajal silmitsi kahe murega, mis vajavad tarku lahendusi. Andes kindlaid sõnumeid rohepöörde osas, anname samal ajal investoritele ja erasektorile kindluse investeerida uutesse lahendustesse. See omakorda aitab elavdada meie majandust. Kunagi varem pole ka taastuvenergia olnud nii odav, kui see on täna. Päikese- ja tuuleenergia on mitmel pool vägagi konkurentsivõimeline. On piirkondi, kus see on juba odavam kui tavaline fossiilkütusel toodetud elekter. Ka meretuuleenergia hind on jõudsalt alanenud ja see trend on jätkumas. Meil puuduvad adekvaatsed põhjendused, miks peaks jätkama vanade mudelitega, millel puudub tuleviku vaade. Head sõbrad, mainitud arengute valguses esitas Euroopa Komisjon juba selle aasta 8. juulil koos energiasüsteemide integreerimise strateegiaga ka oma põhjaliku vesinikustrateegia. Tegemist oli ühe esimese suurema algatusega minu kui energiavoliniku poolt ning on rõõm tõdeda, et see sai väga sooja vastuvõtu osaliseks. Antud strateegia on esimene, kus vesiniku vaadatakse ühtselt. Meie fookus on loomulikult eelkõige puhtal vesinikul, mis aitaks meil dekarboniseerida sektoreid, kus elektrifitseerimine ei ole lõpuni toimiv võimalus. Näiteks rasketööstus või osa transpordisektorist. Samas ei saa vesiniku tähtsust alahinnata ka energeetikasektoris. Vesinik aitab tasakaalustada meie tuleviku elektrisüsteemi, mis põhineb taastuvenergial ning annab võimaluse elektrienergia salvestamiseks. Ei ole saladus, et tänane vesinik tuleb suuresti maagaasist, kuid tuleviku vesinik peab olema puhas ja põhinema taastuvenergial. Meie juulikuine strateegia näeb ette 3 konkreetset sammu. Esiteks, meil on vaja suurendada nii nõudlust kui ka pakkumist. Oleme seadnud eesmärgiks jõuda 2024. aastaks 6 gigavati elektrolüüsivõimsuseni ning 40 gigavati võimsuseni 2030. aastaks. Elektrolüüsiseadmete tootmine peab muutuma tööstuslikuks, ainult nii on võimalik seatud eesmärgid saavutada ning seeläbi ka hinnad mõistlikule tasemele tuua. Juba sel aastal on komisjon avanud 2 erinevat taotlusvooru Euroopa Horisondi ning innovatsioonifondi all, millest elektrolüüsereid toetame. Meie prognooside kohaselt on lähiajal näha ka kohaliku nõudluse kasvu. Selle 10. keskpaigaks on oodata, et tööstus, näiteks terase tootmine, aga ka erinevad transpordiliigid liiguvad nafta ja kivisöe kasutamiselt puhta vesiniku suunas. Teiseks peame looma vesiniku Euroopa turu ning parimad võimalused vesiniku transpordiks. Mitmed liikmesriigid, näiteks Saksamaa, Prantsusmaa, Holland ja Hispaania on juba kinnitanud riiklikud vesinikustrateegiad. Austria ja Portugali strateegiad on valmimas. Kõik need kavad näitavad meile üht. Vesinik hakkab varem või hiljem Euroopas liikuma piiriüleselt. Meil tuleb analüüsida, kuidas saaksime üle-euroopalise vesiniku taristu tehtud võimalikult mõistlike kuludega. Näiteks vaatame, kuidas on võimalik uuendada olemasolevat maagaasi võrgustikku vesiniku transportimiseks. Kolmandaks, meie eesmärgiks on vesiniku tootmisega seotud tööstuse Euroopas hoidmine. Selleks oleme loomas Euroopa Vesinikuliitu, mis põhineb kogu vesiniku väärtusahelal. Antud liit peab kokku tooma kõik osapooled, avaliku ja erasektori, ülikoolid ning ka kolmanda sektori esindajad. Tänaseks on juba enam kui 600 organisatsiooni näidanud üles huvi antud liiduga ühineda. Kui see ei kinnita, et vesinik on tulnud selleks, et jääda, siis mis seda teeb? Euroopa ei ole loomulikult ainus, kes vesinikumajanduse arendamisest mõtleb. Vesinik on üheks huvipakkuvamaks teemaks kõikide meie rahvusvaheliste partneritega. Ei ole kohtumist kolmandate riikidega, kus vesiniku roll kliimaeesmärkide saavutamisel üles ei tuleks. Seda nii Hiinast, Ameerikani, kui ka Lähis-Idast Aafrikani. Antud globaalset tahet tuleb kasutada. Meil on juhtpositsioon ning võimalus kogu maailma muuta. Nagu ma juba mainisin, siis Euroopa tugevuseks on meie selge pikaajaline kliimaambitsioon. See loob nõudluse tehnoloogia arenguks ning annab investorile kindluse. Samuti on Euroopa esirinnas odava taastuvenergia tootmises. Praegu kogu maailma avamere tuuleenergia on toodetud Euroopas. Meie elektrolüüserite tööstus on maailmas parimate seas ja siinkohal on ka Eestil põhjust uhke olla. Elkogen on üks teed rajavatest ettevõtetest uuenduslike tahkete oksiid elektrolüüserite arendamisel. Vähem tähtis ei ole ka asjaolu, et Euroopal on olemas vajalikud rahalised vahendid ja poliitiline tahe, et vesinikumajanduse kiiremat tekkimist toetada. Oluline on, et meie investeeringud oleksid kiired ning sihipärased. Euroopa Liidu järgmine mitmeaastane eelarveraamistik ehk MFF ning Euroopa taastefond ehk Next Generation EU suunab järgmise 7 aasta jooksul meie majandusse ligikaudu 1,8 triljonit eurot. Sellest 30% peab olema suunatud rohepöörde elluviimisesse. Me mitte ainult ei anna lubadusi, vaid me ka peame neid. Veelgi tähtsam on asjaolu, et juba järgmise 3 aasta jooksul tuleb taastefondi kaudu suunata ligi 250 miljardit eurot rohetegevusteks. Siinkohal on vesinikuga seotud investeeringud selgelt prioriteetsed. Seda nii energeetika kui ka transpordisektoris. Seega rohepööre on täies hoos. Millised on siis Eesti võimalused nende uute arengute valguses? Eestil ja Läänemere riikidel laiemalt on selge tuuleenergia potentsiaal, mis annab suure eelise puhta vesiniku odavaks tootmiseks. Vesinik on hea võimalus ka elektri salvestamiseks ning seeläbi saaks suurendada Eesti varustuskindlust ning vähendada riigi energiasõltuvust. Kindlasti saaks Eesti kasutada vesinikku ka oma transpordisektori emissioonide vähendamiseks. See on üks sektor, kus meie riigi edusammud on siiani olnud üsna tagasihoidlikud. On väga tore näha, et tänasel konverentsil osalevad kõikide transpordisektori esindajad ja kindlasti on vesinikul suur potentsiaal bussiliikluses ja maanteevedudel, kuid ka mujal. On hea tõdeda, et Eesti on näidanud üles huvi Euroopa ühishuviprojekti H2Go vastu, mille eesmärgiks on luua vesinikul põhinev transpordikoridor Euroopa kirdeosast Euroopa edelaregiooni. Ka merenduses võiks Eestis vesinikul olla suur potentsiaal. Üheks suurepäraseks lahenduseks võiks olla avamere tuuleenergias sadamates puhta vesiniku tootmine ning selle kasutamine laevakütusena. Samuti oleks võimalik vesiniku sadamas kasutada ka energiaallikana või tööstusprotsessides. Nagu juba mainitud, siis kindlasti ei ole momendil puudust Euroopa Liidu vahenditest, millega saaks toetada erinevaid vesinikuprojekte. Olgu selleks siis Euroopa Horisondi või Innovatsioonifondi toetus elektrolüüserite loomiseks või taastefondist vesinikutanklate ja vesinikubusside soetamine. Tasub mõelda suurelt ja neid võimalusi kasutada. Vastates tänasele küsimusele, kas vesinikurong on juba läinud, siis ei. Rong ei ole kindlasti veel lahkunud. Samas ei tohiks kauaks enam kohvilaua taha istuma jääda, on vaja hakata enda aegsasti sättima. Mitme teise riigi eeskujul on näha, kuidas riiklik vesinikustrateegia on aluseks kiiremini kohalt saamiseks. Pannes paika täpse kava, sõnastame ka ühiskonna üles eesmärgi ning Eesti riigi prioriteetsed tegevused. Vesinikustrateegia tegemine võimaldaks väga selgelt suunata ka Euroopa Liidu vahendeid enim just toetust vajavatesse ettevõtmistesse. Ka meie kava õnnestumiseks on vaja, et Euroopas oleks aina rohkem projekte puhta vesiniku tootmiseks ning selle transportimiseks, et omavahel ühendada tootmine ja tarbimine. Ei ole mõtet toota, kui me ei suuda saadavat vesinikku hoiustada ja transportida või kui pole olemas neid, kes seda asutada soovivad. Et see kõik juhtuda saaks, on vajalik luua Euroopa vesiniku ökosüsteem. On vaja koostööd eri sektorite vahel ning liikmesriikide siseselt, aga ka üleselt. Tänane üritus on suurepärane seesuguse koostöö ja tahte näide. On väga tänuväärne, et Riigikogu ja Arenguseire Keskus tänase ürituse korraldasid ja toovad kokku nii poliitikasuunajad, teadlased kui ka ettevõtjad. Ainult nii on võimalik välja selgitada, millised on Eesti vajadused kogu vesiniku väärtusahela ulatuses. Seega soovin teile põnevaid arutelusid.
Väga suur tänu Kadrile ja tõesti, nagu me näeme, väga kiire areng on toimunud, kui minna Euroopa Komisjoni ja tõesti projektid, rahastus, kõik on olemas, ainult tehke ära. Aga nüüd järgnevalt, kuna Kadri ei saa ise kohal olla, siis ta on andnud meile oma nõuniku, kes meiega veebi teel liitub ja on valmis vastama kõikidele nii minu saalis viibijate kui ka siis veebi teel küsimustele. So, hello Kitti, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So, how are you doing?
Tere hommikust.
Tere hommikust.
Very well.
Okay, that's very good. So we have quite a bit of time, 17 minutes, to discuss everything that Kadri talked about, and even from the top about Green New Deal and climate change in general. So what I would really like to start with is, what is the end goal? We talk about carbon neutrality, we talk about climate neutrality. Are these the same thing, and what do they actually entail?
So technically, indeed, we talk about climate neutrality, and this is in order to keep the global climate change under control, because studies have demonstrated that if the average temperature rises by beyond 2 degrees 50, this is going to have disastrous consequences. So we need to radically transform our energy system and our economies in order to keep the greenhouse gas emissions below a certain level, in order to stop the climate change as it is happening right now. And this will mean a transformation system, because we know that the production and the use of energy accounts for about 3/4 of all emissions. So we have to look for new opportunities and new ways to produce this energy and to use this energy in the different sectors. Today you have spoken already a lot about transport, but it's indeed transport, heating, buildings, and we know that the power sector has led the way.
Okay, so why exactly I'm asking that question is the question that if we stop any carbon emissions, are we there yet? Because there are some quite conflicting opinions in that sense, because stopping the emissions doesn't mean that we really arrive at climate neutrality. We have, as professor of Stanford University, former United States Secretary of Energy, Stephen Chu, has said, if we have already made a mess, we really need to clean up that mess. So carbon neutrality seems to be only the first step, and we really need to go beyond that to arrive at climate neutrality.
I think then if you want to take it from a very wide perspective, then, well, first of all, it's not an option to stop all emissions immediately, because right now, the way our societies are organized, it would mean stop all economic activity. At the same time, we see also the reduction of forests across the globe. So indeed, we have to do the two things in parallel. We have to keep our nature, we have to keep our biodiversity, and at the same time transform our economy to reduce the emissions. But I'm not really a climate expert, so I'm more about, I have been working more about how we can transform our energy system in order to make this change happen.
Okay, and you really arrived at the point that I was trying to make, because we talked about what is green energy, and Estonia seems to be doing extremely well with regards to green energy. But if we look into the details, the majority of that green energy is not wind and solar, it's biomass. It's burning carbon fuels still. And why I asked that question is, can we really arrive at climate neutrality if the European Union says that burning of biomass is green energy?
Is a very debated question. For the moment, the stance that we have taken in the EU, that biomass has to be produced in a very sustainable in order to be counted towards the renewables targets. And how this sustainability is measured and established is right now set in legislation, but it can be re-examined every time there is the necessity to see exactly how we manage our forests and how we use all the available bioenergy. Is of course wood. We are here speaking also about second generation bioenergy, so all the scraps and wastes that can be used to energy purposes. But of course, keeping in mind that the first objective would be to avoid that such wastes are produced. So to use our resources in the most efficient way possible. And indeed, bioenergy has been one of the renewable sources that has grown the quickest. And it is as it was growing that the different challenges related to bioenergy have been identified and have been addressed over the years. So it's a very important source, but we have to make sure that it remains sustainable and is used only where it can be produced in a sustainable way that doesn't hurt the planet. At the same time, we see wind and solar energy. And the big change today is that the cost competitiveness, especially of wind and sun, has improved radically. So the solar power in many parts of Europe is actually more competitive than conventional power generation. And this is the same for onshore wind in those parts of Europe where you have lots of wind. So this is a big change to the past, where these type of technologies can now compete in the market and reduce indeed the costs of the energy transition to consumers.
Yes. So now we really arrive at hydrogen, and why I actually asked these questions, and actually our Prime Minister was very, very interested in that, if we burn down forests in order to produce electricity and then produce hydrogen with that electricity, is that the end goal, or how do we stop that from happening?
So I think in hydrogen, why now there is so much potential related to hydrogen is also because of a change of the vision about hydrogen. Hydrogen is not just the solution for decarbonizing certain parts of industry where you need high temperatures, or in parts of transport where you don't have electrification alternatives, but it is also very important in order to help the system work where you have a lot of variable energy coming. So the wind, when it blows, you have lots of energy. When you don't have wind, then you have less electrical energy. The same for the sun. When you have lots of sun, then you have lots of energy entering the grid. These changes in the level of production, they have to be managed. And this is where hydrogen gives new potential to the system. It can help store these energies and help manage the electrical grid. So this is why hydrogen is so particularly important also for the energy system. And indeed, the objective is not to produce hydrogen from either fossil sources or from electricity from biomass, but especially to draw on the flexibility that hydrogen can bring to the system to manage the variability of wind.
Okay, so basically for Estonia, the first real big objective should be to produce a lot of wind energy and solar energy, and really then we can start talking about green hydrogen. So in that terms, these projects have been quite slow in Estonia due to many reasons, mostly somewhat connected to money, but often not actually connected to money. So, and because these are really international projects in the sea region, for example, how can the EU help Estonia with that transition and in order to build up the renewable energy infrastructure and grid?
So the first thing we can do and have started doing is coordination among the different countries to share the best practices, to see what has worked in some countries that could work in others, to inspire each other to make our the best possible. And the start of the initiative, the Baltic Energy Market Interconnection Plan. And this is a very important that can help coordinate these policies and inspire each other in the Baltic Sea region. And some years ago, we have launched also the cooperation on renewable energy in that context, because the initiative started with the objective to end the isolation, the energy isolation of the Baltic states, so to build the interconnectors to the other countries, like Estonia has built with Finland, or Lithuania has built with Poland and Sweden. So the first objective was to connect the markets, so not to leave any parts of Europe isolated. And then building on this, we can build up a common renewables market in this area. And common markets will make also the cost-efficient development of these technologies much easier.
Okay.
So the first thing is coordination.
Yes, of course. And of course, Europe-wide, there's very wide coordination. How are other regions doing? It's somewhere said that Europe is leading the race, but it really depends on what you actually look at. So how is Europe doing, and how are the other regions doing with regards to hydrogen?
So when we speak about leadership, indeed, as you said, there can be very different aspects to it. And when we speak about European leadership in renewables, for example, we do for the moment lead in industrial inventions, so in the number of patents. We do lead on wind technology and especially on offshore wind technology. So that's European industrial prowess. And we do also lead on electrolyzer technology. So in the hydrogen technologies, especially on the production of green, so renewable hydrogen. So Europe is a leader in this. And this was one of the important aspects why we wanted to launch also the hydrogen strategy, in order to keep this European leadership, in order to give demand for these European industries to produce very cost-efficient electrolyzing machines, so that this hydrogen can scale up and can then be used also in different new applications. So what we need to make sure, and this is also why the Hydrogen Alliance is so important, that at the same time as we increase the production, we also increase the demand for renewable hydrogen in Europe.
Yes, thank you. Overall, as I see it, there's quite a bit in electrolyzers. There are a lot of hydrogen buses. However, as far as I'm aware, there are no hydrogen cars made by European manufacturers. It's all from the Asia region. And actually, if you want to daily drive a hydrogen vehicle, it's still quite difficult to do it in most parts of Europe. However, you have been able to do it already for more than 10 years in California, for example. And really, those regions are doing a lot, but not talking about it on the policy level. But Europe seems to be talking a lot about these things on the policy level, but the actual projects are not quite that large yet. So how do we connect that discrepancy?
First of all, I would take away the focus from cars, because indeed, as we also estimate in our strategy, road transport, so cars, personal vehicles, are actually not prime focus of our strategies, because we say that hydrogen in the first phase especially is a high value product. So it needs to be used where its use is more efficient and where we can really achieve better objectives. So it is true that in Europe, hydrogen cars are not at the forefront, but it is not also our policy focus. In Europe, what we see for hydrogen is, first of all, local demand. So developing little hydrogen valleys or hydrogen communities where hydrogen can be produced locally and consumed locally in different applications. But the highest added value we see right now is, first of all, to replace the hydrogen that is produced with CO2 emissions in industries that already use hydrogen. So that is in particular the chemical industry. Then the second big focus, find projects in the industry where so far other solutions have been limited. So for example, in the steel industry, there are very, very promising projects to achieve the same high temperatures that you can today achieve with in the future with hydrogen, that is with zero. For the cars, there are alternatives already. There is a battery electric technology which has developed, and in Europe, because of efficiency and competitiveness, has outcompeted hydrogen in many areas. And just to remind that Europe has set up a battery alliance. With this battery alliance has brought back batteries production into the EU and is actually reversing the trend of importing these products from outside, and has built up is building up an own industry on that. So for hydrogen applications, indeed, we look into the chemical industry, into the steel industry, into some other applications as in the transit buses or heavy duty transport or shipping, and possibly in the future also aviation through the use of liquid fuel that can be produced with the help of renewable hydrogen.
So yeah, thank you very much for that answer. So why I asked that question is really that we would like to have some very forward-facing applications and to people to actually experience those things themselves, to get a personal relationship with hydrogen. And also, it's much talk about battery electric vehicles. It's quite problematic in our climate. So our climate, particularly in the wintertime, is not very favorable to battery electric vehicles. And when one wants to drive more than 100 kilometers per day, it becomes very, very problematic. Unfortunately, our time is now up. I thank you very much for answering the questions and really introducing this whole sector and really putting up with me. So thank you very much.